I'm Rebecca Mitchell. I'm 34, and I built my boutique clothing business from nothing. Last summer, during our annual family reunion, I casually checked my bank account between laughs and lemonade, and I swear my heart just stopped. Every single penny, gone. I thought it had to be a glitch. It had to be right. But then I caught my brother-in-law, Kyle, smirking across the room, and he had the audacity to say, "We needed it more than you." Just like that. As if stealing my life savings was some minor inconvenience, like I wouldn't notice. I was shaking. I grabbed my bag and said, "Then you won't mind what's coming next." Before I take you through the rest of this insane story, drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from. And hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to someone, especially someone in your own family who crossed the line. Okay, let's rewind a bit. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. My parents weren't wealthy, but they were hardworking. They ran a small hardware store and worked long hours to give my sister Allison and me a stable middle-class life. I started working when I was 14, saving every dollar from my summer jobs. Allison, not so much. She was more into socializing, always spending faster than she earned. After graduating with a business degree, I got a job with a corporate retail chain. Spent 3 years there, learning everything from supply chain to customer service. But I had a bigger dream, my own boutique, a place that sold sustainable, locally made women's clothing. A niche market, but one I believed in. My friends thought I was nuts when I quit that steady job and put my last $5,000 into what I called Mitchell Designs. Those first 2 years, brutal. 18-hour days, living on ramen noodles. I reinvested every dime back into the business. Then tragedy hit. My parents were killed in a head-on collision with a drunk driver. It broke us. Allison and I grieved differently. I threw myself into work. She spiraled, dropped out of college, went through a series of dead-end jobs. When the estate settled, each of us received $75,000. I poured mine into expanding my store and finally launching an online presence. It worked. Business started to grow, slowly, steadily, and it felt like I was finally getting traction. Then Allison met Kyle. They met at a casino of all places. Within 6 months, bam, married. The wedding was ridiculously extravagant, considering neither of them had a stable income. Kyle said he worked in financial consulting, but he was always vague. He had slicked back hair, an expensive watch, and this habit of dominating conversations, especially about money. At their wedding, he turned to me and said, "Your sister's little clothing business is cute, but real money, that's in assets and investments." Charming, right? I tried to be supportive. He was my sister's husband, but something about him always rubbed me the wrong way. And over time, I noticed something else. Allison started changing. The vibrant, opinionated woman I'd grown up with. She got quieter. She'd glance at Kyle before speaking, like she was checking if it was okay to say something. Phone calls between us got shorter, more strained. Then one day, my cousin Emma mentioned she saw Kyle outside a bank yelling at someone who looked like a debt collector. I asked Allison if everything was okay. She got defensive, told me they were better than ever, but the worry in her eyes said otherwise. The lake house had been in our family for generations. It was just a simple 3-bedroom cabin on Lake Otsego. After our parents died, Allison and I agreed to keep it and continue the tradition of a family reunion every July, a weekend of barbecue, swimming, and nostalgic chaos. This past July, I showed up with mixed feelings. On one hand, my business was booming. I just secured a location for a second store and got approved for a $120,000 expansion loan. That money was sitting in my account, ready to go. It represented 5 years of grinding, sacrificing, building something real. I pulled into the gravel driveway and spotted the familiar blue shutters on the cedar siding. It always brought me back to simpler times. Uncle Robert was already tending the grill, and Aunt Patricia was rearranging flower pots on the porch. Emma waved from the dock, yelling something about water toys and her kids. "Rebecca," she called out, jogging over for a hug. "It's been too long. How's the boutique?" "Better than ever," I said, grabbing my overnight bag. "We're expanding downtown." Her smile faded a little. "Just a heads up, Allison and Kyle got here about an hour ago. He's in a mood. Bragging about some investment windfall, new car designer stuff. It's kind of a lot." I nodded, steeling myself. As we walked toward the house, I could hear Kyle's voice through the screen door, loud and confident. Something about a real estate opportunity, guaranteed to double your money. Allison spotted me first. "Becca," she said, using my childhood nickname. She hugged me quickly, then glanced at Kyle like she needed approval for the interaction. She looked thinner, makeup perfect, dress expensive, but she didn't look happy. Then Kyle turned around with a whiskey glass in hand and said, "The entrepreneur arrives. How's the little shop doing?" "Still selling enough dresses to pay the bills," I said with a smile. I knew he meant to insult me, but I wasn't there to fight. "We're actually expanding, just locked down a second location." "In this economy," he chuckled, pulling Allison closer. Brave. I noticed a Rolex on his wrist that wasn't there at Christmas, and Allison's diamond earrings caught the light like a spotlight. Luckily, Uncle Robert saved me. "Time to get those steaks going," he called out. I used the opportunity to escape to the back of the house, my usual room. As I unpacked, I kept thinking about Kyle's sudden wealth. The man had reportedly been laid off months ago after mishandling client funds. I placed my laptop on the desk and tucked my tablet into the nightstand drawer. I made a mental note to check some business emails after dinner. What I didn't know at the time was that this reunion weekend wasn't just going to be awkward. It was about to become the battleground for everything I'd worked so hard to build. That first evening played out the same way it always did on reunion weekend laughter stories and way too much food. But beneath the usual buzz of conversation, there was this unspoken tension in the air. I could feel it clinging to my skin like humidity. Aunt Patricia brought out her famous potato salad, a 7-layer dip that disappeared within minutes, and those buttery homemade rolls that always reminded me of summers as a kid. It should have felt comforting. Instead, I felt like I was walking through a dream that was about to turn into a nightmare. "Rebecca, honey," Uncle Robert said, as we gathered around the old oak dining table, "tell us more about this new store you're opening." He was always the peacemaker in our family, retired high school principal, master of steering conversations away from anything remotely controversial. I was grateful. "It's in the Pearl District," I said, letting myself enjoy a flicker of excitement. "The space is right between a popular coffee shop and an art gallery, so we're expecting great foot traffic. I'm hoping it'll double our sales." "That sounds expensive," Kyle interrupted, slicing into his steak a little too aggressively. "Commercial real estate in that part of town must be what, $1.50 sounds per square foot." "Seems risky." "I've done the math," I said evenly, refusing to rise to the bait. "The numbers check out." Aunt Patricia jumped in like she always did when drama was brewing. "Speaking of numbers," she said in her gossipy tone, "I heard Melissa Anderson's daughter had to declare bankruptcy. Another boutique. So sad. These small businesses, they're just so vulnerable." I caught Kyle smirking, and I noticed Allison wasn't eating much. She just stared down at her plate while picking at her food like she was somewhere else. Thankfully, Emma jumped in to change the subject. "Dad, tell everyone about your new fishing boat." While Uncle Robert launched into a play-by-play about trolling motors and bait compartments, Emma reached under the table and squeezed my hand. It was her way of saying, "You're not alone in this." After dinner, everyone moved to the living room to drink and play games. I slipped away to my room, telling them I had emails to check. The moment I stepped inside, I froze. Something was off. My laptop wasn't where I left it. It had been moved just slightly, but enough for me to notice. The charging cable was now plugged into a different port. The angle of the screen was different. Nothing looked wrong per se, but I'm meticulous about my things, especially my work devices. I opened it, Checked my browser history. Nothing jumped out. But that didn't mean anything if someone knew how to cover their tracks. As I was about to close the laptop, a notification popped up. New device accessing your account. My heart dropped. I clicked into my bank's security dashboard and saw 3 failed login attempts from an unrecognized device, all within the last hour. The system had blocked the attempts, but still, it was too coincidental. I closed the lid and made a decision, then and there. For the rest of the weekend, I was keeping an eye on everything. Maybe I was being paranoid, or maybe I was finally listening to my gut. When I walked back into the living room, Kyle was showing off his new watch, boasting about how only 500 of them were made in the world. Limited edition diamond bezel. Pricey. Must have cost a fortune, Uncle Robert said, not sounding particularly impressed. You've got to spend money to make money, Kyle replied with a wink. I've got some investment opportunities that'd make your retirement account look like pocket change. Allison stood silently beside him, her smile frozen. Her eyes flicked to me briefly, and I saw something there. Guilt, fear, I couldn't tell. Before I could say anything, Kyle nudged her. Tell them about your new car, babe. She described the luxury SUV they'd bought last month, voice-tight hands clenched in her lap. Later that night, after most of the house had gone quiet, Emma pulled me aside out on the porch. The lake was still the moonlight shimmering across its surface. Something's going on, she whispered, glancing back at the house. You noticed too, I asked. She nodded. Allison called me last week, asked to borrow $5,000 for a medical bill. But when I asked what it was for, she clammed up, wouldn't tell me anything, then hung up. I sighed, crossing my arms as the breeze drifted across the porch. Today someone tried to access my bank accounts. My laptop was definitely moved, and I got alerts about failed login attempts. Emma's eyes widened. You don't think... I don't know what to think, I said. But I'm not taking any chances. I'm changing every password and setting up 2-factor authentication on everything. Back in my room, I did exactly that. Locked my laptop and tablet in my suitcase before going to bed. Around 2 a.m., another alert popped up on my phone. Another failed login attempt. This time from the bank's mobile app. Someone wasn't giving up. The next morning, breakfast was casual. People wandered in and out for coffee and Aunt Patricia's blueberry pancakes. I sat at the table, phone in hand, scanning alerts. Kyle was already there, sipping his coffee. Business never sleeps, huh? He said with a smirk. Must be exhausting being a one-woman show. I've got a team, I replied without looking up. Good ones. Still, he shrugged. I prefer investments. You let the money work for you, not the other way around. Before I could respond, my phone rang Claire, my business partner. I stepped out onto the porch and answered. Her voice was tight with panic. Rebecca, something's wrong. The vendor payment bounced. System says insufficient funds. That can't be right, I said, heart racing. We had that money set aside specifically. I hung up and logged into my bank app. My fingers were shaking. The password worked, but what I saw on the screen made my blood run cold. All of my accounts, checking, savings, business, every single one showed a balance of 0. Every last dollar gone. I clicked through the transaction histories. Multiple transfers, all yesterday evening and early this morning. Over $120,000 drained and sent to an account I didn't recognize. I stood there on the porch, the air suddenly thick and hard to breathe. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't an error. This was deliberate, calculated. Someone had stolen everything, and I had a sick feeling I knew exactly who it was. I stumbled back into the kitchen, my face, pale fingers clenched around my phone. Conversation stopped. Coffee mugs froze midair. All eyes turned to me. Rebecca, Uncle Robert asked, concern, tightening the corners of his eyes. What's wrong? My money, I said, voice distant, like I was talking through a wall of fog. It's gone. All of it. What do you mean gone? He asked, standing up from the table. I held out my phone, showing him the bank app screen. Every account, my business, personal savings, over $120,000, drained. The room erupted in a flurry of shocked voices. Aunt Patricia gasped, hand to her chest. Emma rushed over, grabbing my wrist to look at the screen herself. But I wasn't looking at her. I was watching Kyle and Allison. Allison stared hard into her coffee mug. Kyle. Kyle looked unreadable. Neutral. Too neutral. Have you called the bank? Emma asked, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. I just saw it, I said, already dialing. My hands were trembling, but I managed to press the right buttons. The family fell silent as I put the call on speaker. Ms. Mitchell. The bank representative said I see several large transfers from your accounts starting at 11:42 p.m. and continuing through 4:15 a.m. this morning. I didn't make those transfers. I said, my voice sharper now. They were made using the correct credentials, the rep continued, from a device previously authorized on your account, same IP address as your current location. The words hit me like a truck. This wasn't just a hack. It was someone here, someone in the house, someone who had used my own devices, who knew my passwords, who'd watched me close enough to know exactly when and how to strike. I ended the call. My pulse was hammering in my ears. Someone in this house stole my money, I said, my voice suddenly steady, even as I trembled. Someone accessed my laptop yesterday, figured out my passwords, and transferred every penny I have. Now, Rebecca Aunt Patricia started nervously. Let's not jump to conclusions. It could still be a technical error. I didn't forget I snapped, and I didn't make a mistake. This was theft. The room went dead silent. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. She's right. This is serious. If someone here did this, they need to come forward, right now. I looked around the table. Emma looked furious. Aunt Patricia looked stunned. Allison wouldn't look at me, and Kyle, arms folded, leaned casually against the counter, his expression unreadable. But I saw it. That flicker, a spark in his eyes. Kyle, I said, locking eyes with him. You seemed awfully interested in my laptop yesterday. Were you in my room while I was helping with dinner? Allison's head snapped up. Are you accusing my husband of stealing? I'm asking a question, I replied. Funny that you jumped to defend him before he even answered. Kyle smiled. It was that smirk again. Arrogant. Cold. Your sister knows I'd never need to steal from anyone. We're doing quite well. Then you won't mind showing everyone your bank account, I said, since you're so financially stable. The temperature in the room dropped like a stone. Kyle's smile twitched. I don't have to prove anything to you. Maybe you should look at your business partner before accusing family, he added. Or maybe your expansion plans aren't as solid as you pretend. This could be a convenient excuse. Stop it, both of you, Allison cried out, voice cracking. She looked ill, pale. Her eyes darted between us. The transfers were made from a device in this house, I said. From my own laptop. Someone accessed it without my permission. Uncle Robert stepped between us, doing what he always did, trying to mediate. Rebecca's called the bank. They're investigating. Maybe we should wait for the professionals. They'll have a hard time proving anything if the activity looked legit, I said. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. I turned to grab my phone to call the police. And that's when I noticed it, Kyle checking his phone. That ghost of a smirk was back. It was you, I said quietly. The words weren't a question. They were a fact. You stole my money. Silence slammed into the room like a brick wall. Allison looked like she couldn't breathe. Kyle looked up slowly, meeting my gaze without blinking. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he shrugged. We needed it more than you, he said, like he was talking about borrowing sugar, not draining someone's life savings. You've always had it easy, your little business, your perfect life. Some of us have real problems. The room exploded. Aunt Patricia gasped. Uncle Robert's jaw dropped. Emma swore under her breath. Allison looked like she might collapse. Kyle, she whispered. Tell me you didn't. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. You son of a, I stopped myself. That money wasn't just mine. It was for my employees, for the expansion. It supports 5 families besides my own. Oh, spare me, Kyle said, rolling his eyes. You'll bounce back. People like you always do. I was shaking with rage. We're drowning in debt, he added. Allison's medical bills. I blinked. What medical bills? Allison's eyes widened. She looked terrified. Kyle shot her a warning glance. It doesn't matter, he said. What matters is we needed the money more than you. Consider it a family loan. A loan, I nearly shouted. You stole $120,000. I'm calling the police. His expression hardened. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Family loyalty goes both ways. Don't you dare talk to me about loyalty. I grabbed my phone. Kyle lunged. He reached for me, trying to snatch the phone out of my hand. No police, he hissed. Uncle Robert stepped between us, and Emma pulled me back. Kyle, that's enough, Uncle Robert shouted. I caught Allison's face in the chaos, not just upset, terrified, and not of the situation, of Kyle. I'd seen that look before. Women who came into my boutique with bruises hidden under scarves and long sleeves. Allison, I said, my voice gentle now. What's really going on? Talk to me. Before she could speak, Kyle cut in. We're done here. Allison, get our bags. You're not going anywhere, I said, standing my ground. Not until I get my money back. Kyle laughed. The money's already moved again. You'll never find it. Then you won't mind what's coming next, I said, voice steady, even as my hands shook. That's when we heard it. A loud, authoritative bang. The front door slammed open. Heavy footsteps thundered into the house. Police, everyone stay where you are. The kitchen froze. 2 uniformed officers entered, followed by a detective in plain clothes. Rebecca Mitchell, the detective, asked, her eyes locking on mine. I nodded. That's me. I'm Detective Harmon, Portland PD, Financial Crimes Unit, she said, flashing her badge. We received an alert about suspicious account activity and attempted identity theft. We need to speak with you privately. Kyle's face drained of color. Allison gripped the table for support. Officers, Kyle's started voice suddenly smooth and polite. This is a family matter. We're resolving it internally. Actually, one of the officers said coolly, we have probable cause. Miss Mitchell's bank provided preliminary evidence of fraud. I felt a surge of relief. As I followed Detective Harmon into the living room to give my statement, I couldn't help but glance back at Kyle, who looked for the first time completely and utterly afraid. Detective Harmon and I sat in the living room just far enough from the kitchen that the rest of the family's murmurs faded into background noise. She opened her notepad as I handed her my phone. This is everything I told her. Bank alerts, login attempts, even security logs from my laptop. She nodded, professional and composed. We've already frozen the account that received your funds. Your bank's fraud detection system flagged the transfers based on timing, device ID mismatches, and a pattern that matches known fraud schemes. You did the right thing by calling. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Is there a chance I'll get the money back? There's a good chance, she said. With your cooperation and the evidence you've provided, we can build a strong case. But I'm going to need everything: device access logs, email correspondence, anything that can tie the suspect to the transfers. I nodded. I have more on my tablet. I installed security monitoring after a hacking attempt last year. She gave a tight smile. You're more prepared than most people we deal with. We walked back into the kitchen, and the atmosphere had completely changed. Kyle was pacing, his hands clenched at his sides. That smug confidence had crumbled into a twitchy panic. Allison sat silently at the table, her face streaked with tears. Emma had moved next to her, holding her hand protectively. I'd like my money back, I said, locking eyes with Kyle. Every penny of it. It's not that simple, he muttered, rubbing his hands through his hair. The money's been moved, distributed. It's not all in one place anymore. Then you better start explaining where it is, Detective Harmon said, stepping forward. Right now, you're looking at felony charges for fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. Kyle's face twisted. You don't understand. We had debts, gambling debts, people who don't take kindly to not getting paid. Allison let out a sharp sob. Stop lying. Everyone froze. She was shaking, but her voice was clearer than I'd heard in years. There are no loan sharks, no gambling debts, just Kyle, just lies. She turned toward me, ashamed but determined. There are no medical bills, Becca. I'm not sick. He made that up, He's been gambling everything away, my inheritance, our savings. He even took out loans in my name. Shut up, Allison, Kyle barked, stepping toward her. The two uniformed officers immediately moved to block him. Sir, stand down, one ordered. Now. Detective Harmon's tone shifted, calm but firm. Mrs. Henderson, are you saying your husband coerced you into this scheme? Allison nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. She's lying. Kyle exploded. She was in on it. She knew everything. Tell them, Allison. Tell them how you said we deserved that money more than your perfect sister. Allison recoiled like she'd been slapped. I felt sick. He wasn't just a thief. He was a manipulator, an abuser, and he was unraveling right in front of us. Detective Harmon stepped forward. Kyle Henderson, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. The officers moved to cuff him. You have no proof, he screamed, struggling against them. This is all a setup. Unexpectedly, Uncle Robert stepped forward. Rebecca isn't the first person he's stolen from. All eyes turned to him. Last Christmas, Uncle Robert continued, voice steady. My retirement account was accessed. $10,000 vanished. 3 days later, the money was back. I thought it was a glitch, a bank error. But now, I'm wondering if Kyle was testing the waters. Uncle Robert, why didn't you say anything? I asked. Stunned. I didn't want to ruin Christmas, he admitted. And when the money reappeared, I convinced myself I was overreacting. Anyone can make accusations, Kyle shouted, trying to twist away from the officers. You have no proof. I reached into my bag. Actually, I do. Kyle froze. I pulled out my phone and opened the app Maya, my cybersecurity consultant, had installed. After someone tried hacking my accounts last year, we installed a tracker. Every time someone enters the wrong password, it logs it, takes snapshots, even records keystrokes. I handed the phone to Detective Harmon, who scrolled through the logs. Crystal clear images of Kyle at my laptop, timestamps, account numbers, even logs of the exact passwords he used to access my bank. This is quite comprehensive, the detective said, her tone impressed. Kyle's face twisted in rage. You set me up. You let me walk right into this. No, I said calmly. You set yourself up. I just made sure you couldn't get away with it. As the officers led him toward the door, Kyle turned back one last time. His eyes locked on Allison's, and what came next chilled me to the bone. This isn't over, he said. Remember what I told you would happen if you ever crossed me. Detective Harmon's hand shot up. Add intimidation of a witness to the charges. Allison collapsed into sobs the moment the door slammed behind him. I ran to her side, wrapping her in my arms. I'm so sorry, Becca, she cried. I knew what he was doing was wrong, but I was so scared. He said if I told anyone. Her voice cracked. The rest of the sentence didn't need to be spoken. The bruises I'd glimpsed earlier suddenly made horrifying sense. It's okay, I whispered, though nothing about it was okay. You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore. Detective Harmon approached us gently. Mrs. Henderson, I have to ask, has your husband ever been physically abusive? Allison hesitated, then slowly rolled up her sleeve. Bruises, faded and fresh, different shapes, different stages of healing. He's careful, she whispered, always where people won't see. The detective nodded, her voice softened. We'll need to document this. There are resources. We'll make sure you're protected. I looked at my sister, shaken and raw, but finally free. It hit me then. This wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming her life and making sure Kyle never stole another piece of it again. The next morning felt oddly quiet, like the house itself was in shock from what had happened. Outside, the lake shimmered with early sunlight, and birds chirped like everything was normal, but inside, everything had changed. Allison sat at the kitchen table, bundled in one of Mom's old cardigans, her hands wrapped around a mug of untouched tea. She looked exhausted, but somehow lighter, like a massive weight had finally been pulled off her shoulders. Detective Harmon returned just after sunrise to check and document Allison's bruises and take more detailed statements. When the detective asked if Kyle had ever coerced her into anything illegal, Allison looked down for a long moment and said, "Yes." She told us, me, Emma, and Detective Harmon, that Kyle had made her do things, small at first, taking money out of my purse, memorizing my passwords when I typed them in, then bigger things, signing credit card applications in her name. He even filmed her shoplifting from a store once and used the footage to blackmail her anytime she tried to stand up to him. My stomach turned. "That's blackmail and coercion," I said. "He manipulated you into becoming an accomplice." Allison nodded, her eyes glossy. I was scared. I thought if I told anyone I'd be the one arrested, that no one would believe me. Detective Harmon leaned forward. "We'll add those charges. You're not the first woman he's manipulated like this. We're finding more victims. You're not alone." While officers searched Kyle's belongings for more evidence, Uncle Robert made a disturbing discovery, a hidden folder of printed documents Kyle had stashed in the back of the lake house storage room. Inside were personal files on multiple family members, bank account numbers, social security numbers, credit card statements, even photocopies of IDs. "He's been planning this for years," Uncle Robert told me, grimly holding out the thick folder. Every family reunion, every holiday, slowly collecting all this. Flipping through the pages, my hand stopped on something that made my stomach drop, a printed timeline of my business milestones. Website launches, lease applications, even a copy of my loan approval for the expansion. Detailed notes, right down to my account balances. He'd been watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. By the end of that day, Detective Harmon returned with news. "We've frozen all the bank accounts tied to Kyle," she told us. "The good news is we've recovered most of your money." I blinked. "Most?" "The bad news is some of it was converted into cryptocurrency. That portion's harder to trace." "How much is missing?" I asked, trying to brace myself. "About 6%, she said. "But we're working on it. With the cooperation from your bank and the FBI stepping in, we're optimistic we'll recover more." The FBI. I didn't even realize how deep this went until that evening when Detective Harmon explained that Kyle's actions had triggered red flags in other investigations. The fraudulent activity wasn't just limited to my accounts or even to our family. There were signs he'd been running a wider scheme, targeting other victims, maybe strangers, maybe people he met through his supposed financial consulting. That night, I sat on the dock with Allison. The lake was quiet, the sky above, dusted with stars. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small, uncertain. "Now," I said, "we rebuild." She was silent for a while, legs swinging gently over the edge of the dock. Then she turned to me, her expression more focused than I'd seen in weeks. "I'm getting a divorce," she said. "Obviously. But more than that, I think I want to go back to school. Finish my environmental science degree. Start over completely." "That's incredible, Allison." She smiled faintly. "I don't know where I'll go or how I'll afford it, but I know I can't let him define me anymore." "You can stay with me," I offered. "The guest room's yours as long as you need it." She looked at me like she didn't quite believe it. "After everything." "You're my sister," I said simply. "He tried to take everything from us, but I won't let him take you too." That moment, that quiet exchange between sisters on a dock under the stars, meant more to me than any amount of recovered money. Kyle thought he'd broken us, but all he really did was break the illusion that we were okay when we weren't. The next day, we sat down with Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia in the lake house living room. Emma joined us too, her arms full of paperwork from her own credit report, which showed 2 unauthorized inquiries in the last few months. "This might be bigger than just your accounts," Emma said. "I think he was testing us all, seeing who would notice." Uncle Robert added, "I had my friend at the credit union run a quick check. Turns out Aunt Patricia's retirement account had a few maintenance adjustments 3 months ago. Nothing major, but now I'm not so sure." Emma nodded. "And my son's college fund lost $1,000 last month. It came back as a bank adjustment, but now I think Kyle was behind that too." The realization washed over all of us. Kyle hadn't just stolen money. He had violated trust, hacked into the very fabric of our family's safety net, and he'd done it while smiling, laughing, playing the perfect in-law. Later that afternoon, I found myself alone with Allison again. We were sorting through the guest bedroom, folding old linens, and boxing up outdated decorations. She picked up a snow globe and stared at it for a long time. "I don't know who I am anymore, Becca," she whispered. 3 years with him, and I lost myself. I don't know how to be anything else. "You're still in there," I said. "The girl who made me lemon bars every time I had a bad day. The one who used to organize neighborhood talent shows." She smiled faintly. "God, I forgot about those." "You're not gone, Allison. You've just been buried. It's time to dig yourself out." Tears filled her eyes. "I should have warned you about the money. When he started talking about your accounts, I should have said something." "Why didn't you?" She looked away. "He had things on me. Videos. Things he made me do. He said if I ever crossed him, he'd send them to the police. To you. To everyone." I clenched my fists. "That's blackmail. You have to tell Harmon." "I did," she said. "They're adding it to the charges. Turns out there were other women before me. Women he did this to. It wasn't just me. It should have surprised me. But it didn't." Kyle had always been too slick, too smooth, too confident in how untouchable he thought he was. What he didn't expect was that we'd finally catch up. That night, as the sun set over Lake Otsego, the family gathered on the porch, not for celebration, but for unity. We talked. We shared stories. We made a plan to help each other check accounts, secure passwords, and monitor credit reports. I spoke to a friend of mine, Uncle Robert announced. He's a lawyer and said he'd represent Allison pro bono for the divorce. "And I've already spoken to the women's shelter in town," Aunt Patricia added. "They have counselors and housing support if needed." Emma raised her wine glass. "To family, the real kind, the kind that has your back, not the kind that stabs it." We all raised our glasses, even Allison, and for the first time in what felt like forever, her hands weren't shaking. The following morning, as light filtered through the lake house curtains, I finally allowed myself to feel it relief. Not because everything was resolved, not yet, but because Kyle was gone, arrested, charged, out of our lives. And Allison, she was beginning to look like herself again. While she gave her official statement downtown with Detective Harmon, I stayed at the lake house porch with my laptop open, sipping coffee and waiting for a video call with Maya Patel, my cybersecurity consultant. "Your system worked perfectly," Maya said the moment she appeared on screen. "The software logged every access attempt, timestamps, keystrokes, screenshots. You've got the full package. We already packaged it and sent it to Detective Harmon, encrypted and ready." "Thank God," I said, exhaling. "Honestly, I didn't expect to ever need that software." Maya gave a knowing smile. "Most people don't, until they do." She leaned forward, her expression more serious. "Can I ask you something? This wasn't just a random hacker. This was family. Are you okay?" I paused, glanced out at the lake, still and quiet the way it always was after a storm. "I'm still processing," I admitted. "But I will be." After the call, I walked back into the kitchen where Emma sat waiting with lunch and a knowing look on her face. "You knew, didn't you?" she said, not accusing, just perceptive, about Kyle. "Maybe not everything, but something." "I suspected someone was trying to get into my accounts," I admitted. "Didn't know it was him, but the security measures were already in place from that hacking attempt last year. I just upgraded everything once the expansion loan came through." Emma nodded. "That's why your business survives. You prepare for things the rest of us ignore." I let her compliment land, but the guilt still flickered inside me. I wish I'd been more aware of what was happening with Allison. I was so focused on the business, I didn't see the signs. "You're not the only one," she said gently. "Abusers are good at hiding. And Allison, she was good at pretending." Just then, Uncle Robert stepped into the kitchen, holding his phone. His face was grim. I asked a friend at the credit union to run checks on our extended family, just in case Kyle had accessed more than Rebecca's accounts. And I asked, bracing myself, Aunt Patricia's retirement fund had unusual logins 3 months ago. No funds were stolen, but someone definitely poked around. And Emma's son's college account had $1,000 withdrawn last month. It was returned 2 days later, labeled as a bank correction. Emma cursed under her breath. He was testing, seeing who was paying attention before going after the big score. And I was the big score, I muttered. Great. Uncle Robert nodded. I'm asking everyone in the family to check their accounts and freeze anything Kyle might have had access to. I agreed. It's not just about recovering the money. It's about protecting what's left. That afternoon, Allison and I finally got a moment alone. We were upstairs going through some of Mom's old boxes, deciding what to keep and what to donate. She found a faded photograph of us as kids, her in a tiara, made from foil me, holding a lopsided cake. We were so different back then, she whispered. No, I corrected her. We were just unburdened. She smiled, then surprised me by saying, I've been thinking of selling my half of the lake house. I froze. Really? Yeah, I need a clean break, a fresh start. The money could help me go back to school, maybe get a small apartment. You know, I'll let you stay with me as long as you need, I reminded her. I know, and thank you. But this lake house, it's been part of the happiest and worst times in my life. I need something new now. I nodded, even though a part of me hated the idea of letting go of her share. Still, I understood. Sometimes healing means putting down what hurt you, even if it also held some of your best memories. Later, we joined the rest of the family out on the dock for a picnic dinner. The kids were splashing in the water. Emma passed out paper plates, and Aunt Patricia was fussing over the fruit salad like it was a wedding cake. Uncle Robert sat beside me quietly watching it all. I wanted to thank you, I said, for speaking up about your account. That couldn't have been easy. He sighed. I should have said something sooner. Maybe if I had, Kyle wouldn't have gotten this far. We all miss things, I said. That's how people like him get away with it. They rely on our silence, on our instinct to give family the benefit of the doubt. He nodded, looking older than I'd ever seen him. That's the part that hurts the most. Not just the theft, the betrayal. The next week, Allison and I visited our parents' graves together for the first time in years. She laid down a bouquet of white lilies while I added a sprig of rosemary, Mom's favorite herb. I keep wondering if they'd be disappointed in me, Allison said softly, for staying with Kyle, for letting him take so much from you. I turned to her. No, they'd be proud of you, for surviving, for finally leaving, for finding yourself again. She looked at me, a tear rolling down her cheek. And you, are you disappointed in me? The question caught me off guard. No, I said. I'm just sorry I didn't protect you better, that I didn't see it sooner. She touched my hand. You couldn't have known. He fooled all of us. But we're here now. That's what matters. On the way back to the car, she stopped suddenly. I want to start a support group, she said, for women who've experienced financial abuse. Not just physical or emotional people. Forget how damaging financial control can be. I smiled. That's a brilliant idea. Maybe I can help others the way you helped me. You already are, I said. 3 months later, as summer gave way to fall, I sat in my second store's office, reviewing the quarterly numbers. They were better than projected. Sales were strong, foot traffic steady, and the boutique had earned a glowing profile in Portland Style magazine. I was about to close my laptop when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Detective Harmon. Update. Kyle accepted a plea deal. 12 years possibility of parole after 8. Your evidence sealed the case. Thank you for your courage. Tears filled my eyes, not out of sadness or even relief, but because of what it represented. Closure, justice, freedom. I forwarded the message to Allison, who was back in school and had just passed her first biology exam in 5 years. Her response came within seconds. Finally, dinner tonight to celebrate. I texted back, absolutely, I'll bring champagne. As I closed my laptop and prepared to lock up the shop for the day, I glanced at the framed photo on my desk, me and Allison as kids, that same one she found in the attic. Kyle had tried to erase that connection, but instead he reminded us of its strength. We survived. We rebuilt, and we would never let anyone tear us apart again. That evening, Allison and I sat at our kitchen table, clinking glasses of champagne over a modest dinner she had cooked her signature lemon garlic pasta, the same recipe our mom used to make. It was the first time in years that dinner felt like home again. To closure, she said, raising her glass. To new beginnings, I added. As we ate, I noticed something different about her, not just in her appearance, though the dark circles under her eyes were finally fading, and her posture had lost that nervous hunch. No, it was something deeper. A quiet kind of strength was building inside her. She wasn't the same woman who had flinched at Kyle's voice or second-guessed every word she said. She was healing. After dinner, we curled up on the couch with mugs of tea and talked about things we hadn't dared touch in years. The cracks in her marriage, the little moments when she'd wanted to leave but didn't, and the guilt that still clung to her like a second skin. I still feel ashamed, she admitted. I know I shouldn't, but I do. That's normal, I said. He made you believe it was your fault. That's what manipulators do. She nodded slowly. And now, I'm trying to unlearn everything he taught me about myself. You're doing it, I said, squeezing her hand, every single day. The next morning, we returned to the lake house, not for a reunion or emergency, but for something surprisingly ordinary, a work day. The whole family had agreed to help refresh and clean the property after the chaos of that summer. Uncle Robert arrived first, organizing painting crews and drafting a checklist that looked like it came straight from a principal's desk. Aunt Patricia supervised the kitchen, deep clean, like a military general. Emma brought her kids, who immediately began helping by chasing each other around with brooms. Allison and I took on the bedrooms. As we sorted through drawers and old linens, we unearthed forgotten knickknacks, faded Polaroids, and letters from summers long past. I've been thinking, she said, as she held up a dusty jewelry box, about selling my half of the house to you. I stopped folding a blanket and looked at her. Are you sure? She nodded, staring out the window. It's not that I don't love this place. I do. But I need to build something that's mine, not something that reminds me of who I used to be. You know I'll take care of it, I told her. I know, she said. And you'll let me come visit, right? Anytime. Later, as we all gathered outside for sandwiches and lemonade on the dock, I found myself looking at our family with fresh eyes. Uncle Robert was telling one of his terrible jokes, and Aunt Patricia was fussing over whether the kids had eaten enough. Emma lounged beside us, her sunglasses perched on her head as she scrolled through photos on her phone. Allison sat next to me, her face tilted toward the sun, eyes closed, a soft smile playing at her lips. You know what I've learned through all this? She asked without opening her eyes. What? That family isn't just about blood. It's about boundaries, about protecting each other, but also knowing when not to enable. I looked at her, surprised by the insight. That's pretty profound. She laughed. Mom used to say something like it, love without limits isn't love, it's negligence. I never understood it until now. That evening, Uncle Robert and I sat on the porch steps, watching the kids throw pebbles into the lake. I've been meaning to say, I told him I appreciated what you said about Kyle, standing up, admitting what happened to your retirement account. That couldn't have been easy. He sighed and sipped his coffee. It wasn't. I almost didn't say anything. Thought maybe I'd imagined it, or that it didn't matter. It did, I said. It mattered a lot. He nodded slowly. Kyle thrived in the space between what we saw and what we were willing to admit. He counted on our silence. I sat with that for a moment. Yeah, he did. A week later, Allison and I made a quiet visit to our parents' grave. It was overcast, the sky soft and gray. We knelt side by side, each placing a hand on the headstone. Do you think they'd be proud? She asked. I do, I said, even after everything I let happen. Especially after everything you got out of. We stayed in silence for a while. Then as we stood to leave, Allison looked at me and said something that took my breath away. I'm thinking of starting a support group. I blinked. For women like me, people coming out of financially abusive relationships. I looked around after Kyle was arrested and realized there's almost nothing out there. No one talks about it. Everyone talks about bruises, not the bank accounts, not the loans, not the control. That's amazing, I said. I want to help. I want to make sure other women know what I didn't. You're going to help so many people, Allison. Maybe, she said. But even if I only help one, it'll be worth it. 3 months later, Mitchell Designs was thriving. The second store had already broken even ahead of schedule. We'd hired 3 new employees. Online sales were up 40%. And we'd just been featured in a national sustainability magazine. One afternoon, as I was reviewing payroll, my phone buzzed. Text from Detective Harmon update. Kyle accepted a plea deal. 12 years with possibility of parole after 8. Your evidence was key. Thank you. I stared at the message for a long time, not knowing what to feel. Satisfaction, sadness, closure. I forwarded the message to Allison. Her response was instant. Finally, dinner tonight to celebrate. Absolutely. I'll bring the champagne again. That evening, we toasted in our little kitchen once more, this time not out of relief, but triumph. Not just because Kyle had been held accountable, but because in spite of everything he tried to destroy, we were still here, thriving, healing, rebuilding. And this time on our terms. It had been almost 6 months since the family reunion that changed everything. Since the moment I checked my bank account and realized every dollar I had worked for was gone. Since Kyle's smug smirk confirmed what I feared, that the betrayal had come from within my own family. But sitting in the sunlit corner of my second boutique location, watching the afternoon crowd flow through the shop, you wouldn't know any of that had happened. The store was buzzing. A mom held up 2 dresses to her teenage daughter, debating which color looked best. A couple browsed the eco-friendly scarf display by the window. My staff worked confidently, chatting with customers, updating inventory. My life, was moving forward. Claire, my business partner, popped her head into the office. Portland Style just shared the feature article on socials, she said, grinning. Our online traffic is spiking already. Perfect, I said, leaning back in my chair with a satisfied smile. Let's keep it rolling. The article, titled Reclaimed Power, the woman behind Mitchell Designs, was already getting shares and comments. The journalist had done a fantastic job highlighting our focus on sustainable fashion, local partnerships, and carefully, respectfully, my story of surviving financial betrayal and fighting back. But more important than the PR boost or the sales bump was the message: women could recover, could rise, could rebuild. Later that evening, I returned home to find Allison in the kitchen, flour on her cheek, the scent of cinnamon in the air. I made Mom's apple crisp, she said, setting the dish on the counter. Therapy told me to reconnect with things that made me feel like myself, and baking was one of them. I smiled, touched by the simplicity of the moment. That smells like childhood. That's the idea. We sat at the table eating warm apple crisp, reminiscing about school plays, road trips, and how Mom used to sing along to bad 80s music while cooking. For a while, the air between us felt lighter, less like trauma recovery, more like just being sisters again. Did you ever think we'd get here? Allison asked, looking around the kitchen, like really here. No, I said honestly, but I hoped. She wiped a crumb from her chin and looked at me with that old spark in her eyes. The support group is taking off, by the way. We had 9 women last week. One of them said she hadn't told anyone about her situation until she walked into the room. That's incredible, Allie. It feels like the first thing in years that I've done just for me. Not for him, not out of fear, just because I want to. That's how you know you're healing. The next day, I had a meeting with Maya, my cybersecurity consultant, to install even stronger protections across my systems. You're officially my most paranoid client now, she teased as she updated my biometric authentication, but also the most prepared. I'll take that as a compliment. It is, she said. Also, heads up. Remember when you told me you noticed your laptop was slightly moved last Christmas? I nodded. Yeah, that's what made me install the cameras. Well, that instinct saved your business, she said. Most people second-guess their gut. You trusted yours. I thought about that a lot over the next few days. The little signs, the gut feelings, the moments we talk ourselves out of acting because we don't want to believe the worst, especially not from people we love. A week later, we returned to the lake house, not for another dramatic reunion, not because of chaos, just to reclaim it. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert had come too, along with Emma and her kids. We cleaned the place up, painted over the handprints on the stairwell Kyle had left, burned sage in the rooms, donated old furniture, and when it was time to repaint the bedroom that had once held so much stress and fear, I let Allison pick the color. She chose sky blue. It feels peaceful, she said as we rolled paint onto the walls, like I'm finally breathing again. As we worked, Emma paused beside us. You know, she said this place could be a retreat. I raised an eyebrow. A retreat for women, like Allison's support group, a weekend getaway, safe space, workshops, connection. Allison looked thoughtful. That's actually not a bad idea. Could even call it the Reclaim Project, Emma added. We all exchanged looks. Maybe it was just a dream, but it felt right. That night, we sat on the porch steps, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars. The lake was calm again, the wind gentle, peaceful, safe. You were right, you know, Allison said softly. About what? That we'd rebuild, together. I looked at her, this woman who had once been so small, so broken, and now sat beside me, steady, whole, and strong. You rebuilt yourself, I told her. I just stood by and made sure no one knocked it down again. She smiled. Same difference. The next morning, we went into town for coffee. As we walked back to the car, someone stopped Allison. You're the one who started that support group, right? The woman said, probably early 40s. Kind eyes, nervous smile. Allison blinked, surprised. Yeah, that's me. The woman nodded. Thank you. I haven't come yet, but I've been reading the posts. I just wanted to say, thank you. Allison looked at me as the woman walked away, something stunned and proud in her eyes. I think I'm finally starting to believe I'm more than what he made me. You always were, I said. Now the rest of the world sees it too. 1 month later, we held our first Reclaim Project weekend. 12 women, including Emma and Allison, gathered at the lake house to share stories, make art-cooked meals together, and talk late into the night by the fire pit. No guilt, no fear, just healing. And maybe Kyle never understood that. Maybe he thought by stealing our money he'd win. But he underestimated what women do when they come together. He underestimated sisters. So here's what I'll say. To anyone listening, to anyone watching who's ever been blindsided, betrayed, or broken down by someone they thought they could trust, you are not alone. You can recover. You can rise again. If you've ever had to rebuild after betrayal or supported someone on their healing journey, drop a comment below. Let's build something stronger together. Like, subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to know. There is life after loss. There is light after the darkest moment. There is hope even when it feels impossible. Because family is not just who we're born to. It's who stands beside us when the world falls apart.